I love to teach. In fact, I can't remember a time when I didn't love to teach. I grew up with a dream that maybe someday I could become a teacher. You see, my teachers changed my life. And when I think back over the people who have truly touched me for good, many of them have turned out to be teachers. I'll never forget my second grade Sunday school teacher, Mrs. Charles Anderson. After all these years, she still teases me that she taught me everything I know. I remember my sixth grade public school teacher, Mrs. Rudin, who made learning come alive in a way that I've never quite gotten over. And then there was my high school English teacher, Mr. Simmons, who believed that every T should be crossed and every I dotted, who made me do it over and over and over again until it was absolutely perfect. Thanks, Mr. Simmons. And then there were a very few special teachers, the rare ones, the ones who taught beyond their notes and went for our hearts. They reached me in ways that I'm unable to fully describe. All I know is that when I walked out of their classes, I left a better person than when I walked in. They had left their mark on my life. They had molded my character, and how I value them today. Much of what I've become is because of what they taught me. They were the men and the women who taught me the truth, who continued the tradition that my godly parents had started. Maybe now you can understand why I wanted to be a teacher. It's because my teachers changed my life. Therefore, when I think of teaching, I couldn't think of a higher calling or a more noble profession. Perhaps you've not thought about it quite like this, but all of us are teachers. Every day, all of us influence someone in some way. For instance, if you're a parent, then you teach your children all the time, whether you know it or not. They are forever learning from us, even when we don't think we're teaching them. And if you're an older man or an older woman, then you are commanded by God Himself to teach those who are younger than you. Because without your wisdom, without your counsel, so many will stumble and fall. And more than one may never become what they could have become had you not come along and rescued them with the lessons that you had learned. If you're an employer, you'd better be teaching and training your employees all the time, because if you don't, your competition will pass you by just like that. Since it's all true, then, that all of us teach all of the time, perhaps we should all pay a little bit more attention to this thing we call teaching. Perhaps it's time to begin giving teaching the place of honor that the Lord Himself has given it. Just think about it for a moment. Teaching lies at the very heart of Jesus. You see, not only was Christ the truth, but He taught the truth. In fact, no matter where you find Him in the Gospels, Jesus was always teaching. Teaching the 5,000, teaching the 12, teaching the inner circle, or even teaching only the one. It made no difference. Without a doubt, more than anyone else that I know, Jesus was the teacher, the master teacher. But why did Jesus teach? He taught because He knew that the truth sets people free. But the truth must be taught to set people free. And now we must teach. I must teach, and you must teach. For you see, teaching is not merely an option. Jesus turned an option into a commission, the Great Commission. Remember His command to go into the whole world and to teach them to obey everything He's commanded? We've all been commissioned to teach, but so few of us feel adequate to teach, don't we? So few of us have been properly trained on how to teach. I mean, do you know how to actually teach your children so they'll grow up the way you want them to? Or must our children's futures depend upon our hopes and our dreams rather than our instruction? And when you open the Scriptures to teach your Sunday school class, do you know how to prepare a lesson that makes the Bible come alive? Do you know the secrets behind how to teach so people really get helped? I mean, in a way that goes beyond their notes and right into their hearts and sets them free. Well, now you know it. Now it's clear. Jesus Christ made teaching a part of your calling, friend. Not just mine, not just your pastors, but every single Christian has been commissioned by Christ to go and to teach. Therefore, never let it be heard again, but I just can't teach. Why? Because the Lord will always enable you to do what He's commanded. It's because of Christ's Great Commission that we've prepared this series, The 7 Laws of the Learner.
Welcome to the 7 Laws of the Learner video series. Our 7 laws actually spell the word learner. They are learner, expectation, application, retention, need, equipping, and revival. Our first law is the law of the learner. And here to tell you about the law of the learner is the founder and president of Walk Through the Bible, Dr. Bruce Wilkinson.
I'm going to give you an opening story about a man named Dr. Howard Hendricks. How many of you know who he is? He's a dynamic communicator, and he's the person that I eventually went to Dallas Seminary to listen to. I went to seminary basically because I heard him teach, and every time I heard him teach, I said to myself, I want to sit under that man. And I went to listen to him, and I majored in him more than any other subject. Everything that he taught, I took. I took courses I had absolutely no interest in taking. Camping. I took camping because of how Dr. Hendricks taught. And I watched this master teacher teach 4 years worth of teaching, 350 different hours, studying. How did he do it? Till I had it down for an exact pattern. I knew exactly what he was going to do before he did it. And I decided in my last year of seminary to give the man a test. I never told him about this test till years later, but I decided to go into class and not to pay attention. That no matter what he was going to try and do, I was not going to pay attention to see what he would do. Well, there were 30 of us in class, and there was one window in the class overlooking a parking lot. And it was right where this man right here is. So I sat right where he is, and I decided for the entire hour I was going to look out the window and just see what he would do. I took off my watch, I set it down on the desk, and I looked out the window, asking myself the question, what will a master teacher do if one student will not pay attention? Well, we watched him for years. You could see him underneath his oak desk. At about 3 minutes before the hour would begin, you would see his left knee begin to bounce. It's almost like he wound up. You don't see too many women doing this, but men, their knees bounce. I can remember growing up, my mother said, stop that. Your knees just bounce. Warming up almost. And then you could set your watch. His right hand would come sliding off the desk and say, all right, gentlemen, and he'd give you a one-liner that was so good. Everybody in the class, we'd be off and running. And usually, about 6 or 7 minutes into the class, he'd tell his first joke. About 8 or 9 minutes, he'd get up out of the desk and he'd go over to the whiteboard behind it and he'd begin to draw a chart. So I was timing this, studying what he would do. Well, he noticed right away. You can't miss it with 30 students in the class. This person right over here isn't paying attention. Well, he stopped teaching in the middle of about his first minute and told a joke. Now, the joke was totally out of context. He was telling the joke to get me. And I knew if I laughed, he would know I was paying attention. So I put my hand over my mouth just to continue looking out the window. So he told the joke. Everybody else laughed. I didn't laugh. About 2 minutes, he gets up out of his chair. He's 6 minutes early. He gets up out of his chair. He walks back to his blackboard, and he begins to draw. Now, he always picked up the same one, the red the blue magic marker first. He began to draw his chart, and he noticed I wasn't copying down the chart. I had my friend copying down the chart for me. And he noticed, he stopped his chart in the middle. He put his pen down. He was in the middle of it. And he walked over to the edge of the platform, right here, which was about in proportion right here. And he was lecturing like this to me down the corner. I was sweating about this time. He gets off of the platform, I'm right here, and he stands in the corner of the room, lecturing like this. I'm concentrating on the window. Just look out the window. Looked at my watch. 3 minutes and 37 seconds. The chairman of the department runs down the aisle and says, "Wilkinson, what on earth's outside that window?" Said, "Nothing, Prof, sorry," and just turned around. Never told him what I was doing. 3 minutes and 37 seconds. He couldn't tolerate it. He set aside his joke. He got out of his seat early. He began to draw a chart on the back, and he then got up and stopped his chart. He stood in the corner. He ran down, and he yelled at one of his students because one of the students would not be paying attention. And I thought to myself, isn't that refreshing? And then I got out of that class, and I, fully thinking about this, moved to the next class where somebody else was teaching who had a totally different philosophy than Dr. Howard Hendricks. I remember how we used to sit in his class. This side of the class would be those who wanted to pay attention, and this group wanted to do their Hebrew for the class that followed it. And so this group would just come do other homework, and he had in his mind, if you don't want to pay attention, it's not my problem, and he would come over, and he would sit on the edge of the desk and just talk to this side of the room who was paying attention. In his mind, he said to himself, it's not my problem if you don't want to learn. If you don't want to learn, that's fine. I'm here to give you the information. But on the flip side of that, Dr. Hendricks somehow had on the basis of his own thinking that if you're not learning, it's my problem. That I'm the one who's supposed to cause you to learn. And the second teacher had in the back of his mind that it's not my responsibility to cause you to learn. It's my responsibility to cover the material. Now think back for a moment. I asked somebody today at the hotel, how many great teachers did you have? And the young man said to me, I don't think I had more than one great teacher. I said, do most of the teachers care if you learned it? And he laughed out loud. He said, no, they don't care if you learned it. They just wanted to go through their material and take the test. That's one idea. That's the common thought. But here's a Dr. Hendricks over here who has on the back of his mind the thought that says, if you're not learning, it's my problem. I'll leave the 99 sheep that are with me, and I'll go after the one that's not with me. If that happened in your last class that you taught and some rascal came in and decided to look out the window, would you have even noticed they were looking out the window? Or have you bitten into the mindset that says, it's not my responsibility to cause you to learn. If you don't want to listen, that's not my problem. What's God's impression of that? Can you really divorce teaching from learning and saying, teaching is what the teacher does? Whether or not the student learns or not, I can be a great teacher? Can we make that divorce?